In this lecture, we continue our exploration of the life lessons that we learned from the great books and continue with our theme of love, which I believe, if you toted it up, has probably been the subject of more great books than any other single theme in history. Love. We've looked at it in classical Greece, in the Athenian democracy, in the tragedies of Euripides, the Alcestis and the Medea. And the life lessons we drew from those two dramatic performances might well be summarized by what we read in the temple of Apollo at Delphi. Know thyself, know that you are mortal, and nothing in excess, even the best of all emotions, the best of all principles, if pushed too far, becomes destructive. And so Admetus, the king, was willing to let his wife die because he was so unwilling to die himself. Mortality. We will all die. That is the one thing we can be sure of. The writer William Saroyan said, I knew everybody had to die. I just thought somehow an exception would be made in my case. But we're all going to die. That's part of life. And Medea. Yes, she loved Jason, but her love was pushed so far that it became utterly destructive. Destructive to her, destructive to her children, destructive to Jason, destructive to the whole city of Corinth. So nothing in excess. But we might even draw a few more practical notions from all of this. Move on. How much happier would a Medea have been if she had followed Jason's advice and just had moved on, just put things behind her. And in this, our next book, we're going to ponder why you should probably just always tell the truth about any kind of relationship. This is the story of Tristan and Isolde, told in the magnificent poetry of Gottfried von Strasburg in the early 13th century A.D., a story of courtly love. The late 12th, early 13th century saw the full flowering of the feudal system in Western Europe. That was a system that had grown out of the chaos and social and economic and political collapse of the Roman Empire, which rested essentially upon the local duke's need to possess an army, to protect his own people and to protect his own livelihood. And in turn for this, the knights served the local duke. He in turn served the king. And all were bound together by a treaty, an understanding, a feudos, to use the Latin terms, hence feudalism. And out of the feudal system grew the knight, and with it the noble idea of chivalry. You just weren't a warrior, you were bound by a whole code of conduct, resting in the ideal of honor. Honor. It is a word that we use all the time today, but it has no meaning in our own society. Honor. It can only flourish in a society that recognizes the duel. And the duel, combat, was at the very heart of the feudal system. It is a reputation that you possess for keeping your word. It's a reputation for courage, for helping others, even for helping the weak. And in 12th and 13th century, the code of chivalry was elevated by the ideal of love. Love, the very essence of honor and devotion. And with it, the courtly love, the ideal of true romance. And courtly love was in an age in which women were generally not able to choose their husbands. Peasants might choose their husbands, but these aristocratic women, the wife of a duke, the wife of a knight, the wife of a king, they very seldom had chosen out of love. It had been an arranged marriage in order to further the economic benefits of the family. And thus, there they were in a fairly loveless marriage, the husband free to do pretty much what he wanted to, but the wife would become the cherished object of a lover. First, he would admire her from afar. Now, he had to be from the right social standing. He had to be a knight. He had to be endowed with courteous manners. Generally should be able to sing well, and he would admire her first from afar, there at the court, there in the castle, the keep. Then he would approach a little more closely. Then they would begin to exchange little notes, and he would sing songs in public that she alone knew the meaning of. And their dress, too, each color that they wore each day was a little signal to the lover. And so courtly love became first an institution and then an ideal in the Europe of France and England, carried to England by Eleanor of Aquitaine, the wife of Henry II. And it first started really in the southern part of France. And some of our earliest poems in Italian and French are love poems sung to the mistress in what we would call modern French. So courtly love. And one of the most fabled of all the stories of lovers was that of Tristan and Isolde. Now these romances of the Middle Age, and that's what they were, stories of love, have a certain tendency to be located in the western part of Britain, Cornwall. And that is where the Arthurian legends first began. And they too are about a kind of courtly love. Lancelot, Guinevere, and even the pursuit of the Holy Grail is like a form of courtly love, because you're never going to really do more than just glimpse the Grail, but you pursue it forever, and it ennobles your life and gives a meaning to it. And so too, Tristan and Isolde is first located there in Western Britain, but it spread all over Western Europe. And the finest version of it was sung at one of the courts by Gottfried of Strasburg in Strasburg, one of the Minnesänger. And a Minne is the higher cult of love. And these are men who sang about love, and each song was a performance there at court. And each time it would differ. So you find many different versions of these same stories. And in fact, it was very much determined by the audience reaction. And each audience was just a little bit different. The same way each audience that you lecture to is just a little bit different. But we have this magnificent version of Gottfried von Strasburg, probably composed around 1210, which is when he died. And the story is set in Britain and in Brittany, so the western part of France. And there in Brittany, and all of these stories are once upon a time, in a faraway never, never land. Once upon a time, there was a magnificent knight who lived there in Brittany, and his name was Rivellin, and he was a master of all forms of courtly performances, a mighty warrior, a man of thought, a man who could sing well, and he sought adventures. And one of his adventures carried him far off to the land of Cornwall, to the land of Tintagel, where the castle still rises up in its ruins for us. And there he met King Mark. And performing great deeds of valor in the service of King Mark, Rivellin fell in love with the king's own sister, Blanchefleur, the beautiful white flower. And they loved one another, but they were afraid to tell King Mark of their love. And so, in the dark of night, they slipped back to Brittany, and there were wed, and there she became pregnant. There's land was invaded by his kinsman Morgan, and in a duel with Morgan, he killed his enemy, but was wounded by a poisoned spear. And he lay dying in the arms of Blanchefleur. And he passed away, and as he died, she brought forth their child, and then forthwith died wrapped in the arms of her dead lover. And the child was taken up by the liege man, the trusted friend of Rivellin, Roual, and he named the child Tristan, the child of sadness. And he raised little Tristan just as though he were his own child, taught him all the skills of a knight, sent him far off for a series of junior years abroad where he would learn the languages of many lands, the language of the Norwegians, the language of the Danes, the language of the Germans, the language of the Irish. And all the time, little Tristan just thinking that Roual was his father. And he too grew into a courtly knight, a brave warrior, and a magnificent singer on the lyre. And he too sought for adventure. And he went off to the land of King Mark in Tintagel in Cornwall, never knowing that this in fact was where his mother had come from. And there again he performed great deeds of service until Roual came looking for him, found him, and told him the whole story. And Mark said, "You are just like my own son. I'm your uncle. Anything you ever ask, I will give you, and I hope you will stay and be my knight and serve me." Well, at this time, Cornwall was under a heavy tribute from the King of Ireland. And he would send every year his champion over, a giant of a man, Moralt, great red-headed warrior. And every year he would demand tribute in persons as well as in money. And finally Tristan said to King Mark, "Why do you keep paying tribute?" And King Mark said, "Well, he's such a mighty warrior, none of my knights will take on Moralt in battle. I will take him on," he said. And he goes out and fights against Moralt and kills him in battle. But he too is wounded by a poisoned spear. And he's going to die, little Tristan is, unless he can get cured. And the only person who can cure him is Isolde the Wise, Queen of Ireland. Well, how can he go to Ireland since he's just killed their champion? So he disguises himself as a minstrel, floats over in a rudderless boat, arrives, portrays himself as a minstrel, is cured by the queen. But while he is there being cured, he sees her daughter, Isolde, and recognizes how beautiful she is. But that's all it is, just a recognition of her beauty. He pays her tribute from afar and goes back to the land of King Mark. And King Mark's council is meeting, and they're discussing this question of how can we put an end to our constant fighting with the King of Ireland. And Tristan says, "I have an idea for you, uncle." "What is it?" "You're wise beyond your years, Tristan." "Well, what I think we ought to do is send me back and let me make a marriage arrangement between the daughter of the King of Ireland and you, King Mark, uncle. She is so beautiful. Now, what's her name? She's named Isolde, just the same as her mother is. Isolde the fair, the beautiful. And I will go, we'll see if he'll agree to the marriage, and then we'll bring her back. Well, I think it's a difficult task. I don't think you can achieve it, but if you want to, try it. Maybe that will bring peace. So Tristan goes again to Ireland, and there he slays a dragon, because this is a world filled with dragons and magical events. And the king admires him and says, "Anything you want, I will see if I can't do for you." And Tristan says, "Well, I'd like to arrange this marriage between King Mark of Cornwall and your beautiful daughter." "Well, is it all right with you, daughter?" "Anything I can do for you, father." So the marriage is agreed upon, and Tristan is to escort the girl back. Now she has her nurse with her to chaperone, and the nurse has prepared a special love potion. Because King Mark is some older, and it may be difficult for Isolde to fall in love with the king, so she has this love potion. But she doesn't tell the girl, Isolde, or Tristan, that it is a love potion. And it's in a flask just like wine. So they're sailing along, the nurse is off somewhere in the boat, and Isolde says, "I am so thirsty." And Tristan says, "Well, I'm a little thirsty too. Would you like a glass of wine?" "Yes, why don't we take this wine here?" So she drinks it off, he drinks it off, and the nurse comes back and says, "What have you done? You have drunk love, that is death." Now, courtly love is not the same as platonic love. Courtly love has sex as part of it. And that night, they loved, the singer tells us, with such wondrous powers of love that never again could they be parted. So they know what they've done. They know they've drunk a love potion. They know they've consummated their love, and yet they go back to King Mark, and they have to deceive him. Because deception is part of courtly love. Deception in the name of love is never dishonor. Any deed that you must do in pursuit of this love, as long as it cherishes your lady fair, is not dishonorable. So they must begin a whole series of deceptions of King Mark. And their love is clear to anyone who watches them. The gestures of Tristan to her, even after the wedding, the clothes that they wear, the songs he sings over and over again on his lyre to the beautiful Isolde. Again and again he sings them. So people began to talk at court. But Mark will hear nothing against Tristan. He is his fair knight and his best of all champions. And so the love continues. But the stories just will not die down. And Mark has to confront Isolde. "Darling, they're telling all these stories about you. Surely we've got to find some way to put all these rumors to rest." And she says, "I tell you what we will do. I will swear an oath that I have never been in the arms of any man other than you. And let all the people of the kingdom come. And there we will meet, and on the field of honor I will swear this oath. And surely that will put an end to all of these tales." All right. So just work this out with Tristan. She comes by boat. She can't just jump off the boat. She'll get her dress all wet. and it's not suited for King Mark to be walking through the mud to pick her up out of the boat. So a pilgrim is there. Of course, it's Tristan in disguise. She gets out of the boat. He grabs her in his arms to help her down, and together they fall down, you see, lying like that together. And the crowd all sees it, and Isolde tells her husband, I'm going to have to change my oath just a little bit, because now I must swear that I have never lain in the arms of any other man than you and this poor pilgrim that everybody has seen me with. And so the oath is taken. But still, the rumors won't die down, and they're fueled by the handsome qualities of Tristan. People are just jealous of him, and the other knights at court, and the other counselors of the king, they're all just so ferociously jealous of Tristan. So they keep spreading these rumors, rumor after rumor after rumor, until finally Tristan believes that he either must go away and find glory on the field of battle, or simply be destroyed by this love. They keep having secret meetings, Tristan and Isolde do, but he goes away and stays away for a long time, winning fame in battle, fighting as far away as Germany, but he just cannot get Isolde out of his mind. And he comes back one more time, and their love, instead of being diminished by his absence, has grown ever more powerful, ever more potent. And Tristan says, I cannot be away from you anymore. And their love is now so obvious that Mark brings them in and says, I want to believe you, darling, but it is so clear that you love Tristan. I don't want to be the reason for your unhappiness. I cannot have you here at court, but go away. Just go somewhere far away and enjoy your love and leave me alone. You are breaking my heart. Well, they do. And for a brief while, Tristan and Isolde find paradise. They don't go very far away. They go to a forest. And there, amidst the birds and little animals, they build a shrine to love. They find an old pagan temple, and they build a shrine there to the goddess of love, to the goddess of Mine, of higher love. And there they get up every morning, having enjoyed themselves in the evening. They drink the fresh, clear water. They live off the fruits of the land. And there they're just together. But Mark cannot get her out of his mind. He's got to find out whether it's true or not. And he learns that they aren't that far away in their little temple of love. I mean, the name should have told him something, but no, he still wants to believe his wife. So he comes with a group of his retainers, and they creep up in the night. But you can never get the best of Tristan. He's wise. He knows something's always about to happen. So every night after they have made love, they sleep with a sword between them. Protection. But when Mark comes and looks through the window and sees the two of them lying together on their little bed made out of branches, he sees that sword between them, the unsheathed sword, and takes that as a sign that they have been chased all these years, and he has driven them into exile cruelly and unnecessarily, and he invites them back to court. Well, they're out of it this time. Surely they put aside this mad passion, but you can't. You've got to continue to pay court to your love. She is your whole life. He's never married. He's had only her to pursue, though every girl would love to marry him. And they continue their nocturnal meetings in secret. And once again, the evil retainers of Mark spread all these slanderous lies about Tristan. And Mark comes and finds that Isolde has given Tristan the ring, their very wedding ring that Mark had given her. It's gone from her hand. So he brings his beloved nephew into him and says, I don't want to think you've done me wrong, poor Mark, but go away once again, and this time never come back. And Tristan sails far off, does many a knightly deed, slays many a dragon, slays many an evil knight in battle, rescues many a damsel that wants to marry him, and all the time continues to dream of Isolde. But this time she's not allowed to write, and months and even the years go by, and Tristan has never gotten a letter from his love, Isolde. And in his wanderings he comes to the land of Arundel, in the wild western seas off the coast of Scotland, and there offers his service to the king of Arundel. to do battle for him, this wandering knight, this gallant figure. And by the sheerest coincidence, you might say, or by the hand of God, we might say, the daughter of the king is also named Isolde. Isolde. Isolde of the fair hand. Isolde of the white hand. And she looks so much like Tristan's beloved. And she is so taken with love for him. And she pines away with love for him. And her mother says, "You're dying before my eyes." And she says, "I know. I love that knight Tristan. Oh, a goodly knight he is. He is so handsome. He sings so beautifully. And he is such a mighty warrior. He is the very pillar of your father in his old age. Why will he not ask for your hand? I don't know." But Isolde is always on the mind of Tristan, the real Isolde, the true Isolde. But one night he begins to sing there at the court after the banquet has been held, and with Isolde of the fair hand, the young Isolde, there, and her mother and her father, he begins to sing the song that he sings over and over again to himself. Isolde, Madru, Isolde mamie, en vous ma mort, en vous ma vie. Oh, Isolde, Isolde, my true one, Isolde, my friend and lover, Isolde, and you as my death, Isolde, and you as my life. But he doesn't qualify it, don't you see? Doesn't give her a study guide as to which Isolde he's talking about, so she naturally thinks she's the one. And she falls even more madly in love, and he's never heard anything more from the true Isolde, and so he finally marries after all these years. And for a brief while, they're happy. And he becomes a close friend with her brother, whose name is Tristan. It's an Arab name. And much of the apparatus of courtly love and of chivalry existed not only in Western Europe, but among the Moors of Spain and even among the Arabs. In fact, the Western Europeans, like Richard the Lionhearted, believed that there was no more chivalrous knight than Saladin in the Great Third Crusade, the Holy Wars. And Saladin himself believed in chivalry. And the Arabs, even before Muhammad, had had a rich array of love poetry, always sung in honor of an almost unobtainable love. So Tristan, the brother of the wife Isolde, has an Arab name. And he too is in love. Everyone is in love in these. And again, it's an inaccessible love. His beloved is the wife of an evil knight who keeps her locked up in the tower. And he implores his friend Tristan to go and try to rescue the lady fair. And in the course of trying to rescue them, once again, Tristan is wounded, and once again with a poisoned spear. And he is dying there, dying of poison, and he believes only one person can cure him, his old love, Isolde. So he sends his old tutor, who's been with him all these years, sends his tutor back to Cornwall, back to the court of King Mark, and begs Isolde, the true Isolde, Isolde the fair, to come and save him. But he's weakened a great deal, and he seems to be passing from this world. But as soon as she learns it, his true love gets in the boat, doesn't tell her husband, still can't bring herself to confess, and sails off. Tristan has turned to his wife, that Isolde of the fair hand, and he says, "Darling, someone is coming to save me. I am too weak even to look out of the window anymore. But I will know if she is coming, because my old teacher will fly a white sail. But if it's a black sail, then I know she has turned her back on me and loves me no more." Well, this is not what the wife wants to hear. You understand that. This bothers her a whole lot. And she is insanely jealous, and she begins to dawn on her. So he's loved me all the time, thinking I was this other woman, seeing in me her. He marries me just because I have her name. Well, I'll fix him. And so she sees coming across the rugged sea, the wild sea, a ship bearing a white sail. But she turns to Tristan and says, "Sorry, darling, it's a black sail." And he forthwith turns his face to the wall and dies. When Tristan is dead and Isolde has landed, she hears immediately the bells tolling out. And she knows they are tolling the death of her only true love. And she comes to the castle where he lies dead, embraces him, and dies herself of love. And so the two lie there side by side. And word is brought to King Mark in Cornwall. And he sails across the sea and comes to the land of Arundel and goes to where they lie still side by side. Oh, my best friend. Oh, my beloved wife. Why could you not just have trusted me? I would have given you to each other. I would have done it so gladly. But now you must come back and be together forever. And so he took the two back to Tintagel, had a chapel built, the chapel of Tristan and Isolde, buried them in the same casket, embraced, and planted a great vine that grew up and a great rose. And together the two mingled and formed over them a shade that will live forever. And so the two star-crossed, unfortunate lovers came to their end. Now this ideal of courtly love was elevated from the level of the human to the level of the divine. It had a powerful force. And one of the most beautiful instances of divine love is found in the Divine Comedy of Dante. That is a parable of the very ideal of the love of God, of which courtly love was supposed to be the earthly reflection, the most ennobling of all human emotions. Now you think of the Divine Comedy. Who inspires it? The wife of Dante? No. Beatrice. The woman he saw from afar, maybe even only a few times, there in Florence, but instilled such passion and devotion in him that she would be his soul the whole rest of his life. And it would be Beatrice who would guide him up to heaven itself, ennobling his soul. And in heaven itself, the very symbol of God is the rose, the flower of love in all its manifold forms. The 12th century saw the beginning of the Gothic architecture. And from Paris it spread all over Western Europe. What is the Gothic architecture, a Gothic church, except a statement in concrete and stained glass of the ideal of love? You walk into a Gothic cathedral, and it is like the mystical experience of love. The light shining through the magnificent stained glasses, creating a spectacle of vision and beauty and light. And in the very central part of the facade, the rose window, the symbol of God's love. And the ideal is that magnificent passage in the Gospel of John, once again, that God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever believeth in him shall not perish, but have everlasting life. So whether we are pursuing the Holy Grail, whether we are Tristan in pursuit of the eternal feminine beauty of an Isolde, the medieval cult of courtly love was an attempt to state that however imperfect we are here on earth, there is in us a spark of that divine love that unites us with God himself. And who dare say a word about two lovers so magnificent in their devotion to one another, who went through so many trials and sufferings and were finally united only in death? Tristan and Isolde, lovers forever through all eternity.